A few months ago, I was officiating a wedding outdoors, and everything was perfect. The chuppah was beautiful, the couple radiant, the guests were all excited, when a huge gust of wind out of nowhere came and knocked the flower arrangements. The chuppah started to topple, and the bride's veil and the hair were frazzled all over her face and all over the face of her soon-to-be spouse. The photographer, gasped very loudly. The planner looked like she was going to faint. And our bride, well, she looked at me and said, "I guess we'll remember this part too." In that moment, I realized there were two responses: panic over petals we couldn't put back together, or joy in the bigger picture of what we were there to do. So often, we waste our energy trying to control the wind, when our power lies in how we choose to stand in it, holding our metaphorical chuppah steady. That moment under the chuppah really stayed with me, not because of the flowers, but because of the bride's response. She didn't try to fight the wind. She embraced the moment, imperfect as it was. It reminded me that while we can't always control the chaos around us, we can choose to posture what we bring to it. And that same lesson about response and trust in uncertainty sits at the heart of this week's Torah portion, Behaalotcha. We read of the Israelites in the wilderness, learning to follow God's presence as it appeared in a cloud by day and fire by night. They didn't know how long they'd be in one place. They didn't know when they'd be moving again. All they could do was wait, watch, and respond, day by day, moment by moment. וביום הקים את המשכן כיסא הענן את המשכן לאוהל העדות, ובערב יהיה על המשכן כמראה אש עד הבוקר. On the day the tabernacle was set up, a cloud covered it by day, and at night appeared as fire. Whenever the cloud lifted, the Israelites set out, and whenever it settled, they made camp. And at God's command, they journeyed. And at God's command, they stayed. As long as the cloud remained, they remained, faithfully following God's presence day by day. Let's take a moment to remember where the Israelites are in their story. They've just escaped the shackles of slavery in Egypt, a miraculous redemption, yes, but one that dropped them straight into a new kind of uncertainty. They are no longer enslaved, but they are not yet free in the fullest sense either. They are in transit, wandering in the wilderness, caught in that difficult in-between space. Rabbis love to say the liminal space. And as they begin this journey toward the promised land, they are asked to follow the will of a God with whom they are still building a relationship, a God they're just beginning to trust. And in this phase of this journey, they have very little autonomy. They don't set the timeline, they don't control the route, they don't decide when to settle down or when to pick up and move again. When the cloud lifts from the tabernacle, they travel. When it settles, they stay. Their daily rhythm is dictated by something beyond their own planning or preference. Now, I don't know about you, but I love having a sense of control. And I don't mean control over other people, God forbid. I mean control over my own life. I like to know what's coming, to be able to anticipate and to plan and to prepare. There's comfort in that predictability. It gives us a sense of stability and safety in a world that is often anything but stable. But what happens when life doesn't go according to plan? When we don't get the outcome we expected or the timing we hoped for? Pivoting is hard. And when I say pivoting, I don't mean changing what we're doing, but going through the mental and emotional gymnastics of accepting that what we expected is no longer going to happen. Change is unsettling. We get frustrated, anxious, maybe even a little bit angry, maybe very angry. We scramble for a sense of footing that just isn't there. It's human nature. And we see this every day, having interactions with those who are close to us or occurrences in our community, our country, and even in the world. There is so much out there that we have almost no control over. And as we're seeing this right now, today, as we absorb the news from Israel, late last night, Israeli airstrikes targeted nuclear facilities in Iran. And we don't yet know what the implications will be in the hours or days ahead. But what we do know is that this is a moment filled with tension, uncertainty, and risk, not just for Israel, but for the entire region. We pray for the safety of Israel and its citizens, for the return of its pilots, for the protection of innocent lives across borders. And we hold in our hearts the hope that this will not lead to further escalation, but somehow towards a clear path of safety, justice, and peace. And even now, especially now, we remember that we can't control the cloud, but we can choose how we carry ourselves beneath it. We respond with prayer, with connection, with resolve. And now imagine the Israelites living this way, not for a day or a week, but for years, waking up each morning not knowing if they're going to be asked to move or to stay, not knowing how long they'll be camped in one place, not knowing when or even if they would even reach the promised land. It's no wonder they struggled. They had tasted the sweetness of freedom, but hadn't yet learned the patience and the faith required to live in it. In chapter 11, the Israelites grow tired of manna that's provided by God and begin to weep for meat, a good steak, a filet mignon with a side of potatoes. Just meat, not the filet. And what's so funny is that they're reminiscing about the food they had in Egypt. You know, the place where they were slaves. And Moses becomes overwhelmed by the people's complaints. And he turns to God in frustration, saying he cannot bear the burden of leading the Israelites alone. Even Moses couldn't keep it together. And in response, God tells him to gather 70 elders to share the leadership responsibilities because the Israelites' focus was misguided. This was an undeniably difficult chapter in the Israelites' journey, and I don't mean to play it down, I really don't. They longed to embrace what they perceived as a blessing that came with freedom. They thought that freedom was to eat meat all day and to have what they wanted, full of autonomy, to do whatever they needed to do, to venture for themselves. But that is not freedom. Freedom was the ability to build community, be intentional, to have faith in their God that is uninhibited by other people. That was freedom. And that is still the experience of freedom. The transformation the Israelites needed to undergo was part of the true gift of freedom, a shift from mere survival to sacred choice. It was the powerful, often uncomfortable awakening to their ability to choose joy, to act with purpose, and to embrace collective identity over individual interest. Only then could they begin to become a people and not just a crowd. Rather than focusing on the miraculous liberation they had just experienced with its opportunity to choose to see the joy, the Israelites became consumed by the frustrations of desert life. Instead of seeing the journey as part of their becoming, they fixated on their discomfort, missing the deeper purpose. There's this lovely experiment, which I'm sure many of you have heard of, about a teacher who walks into a classroom holding a blank sheet of white paper. And in the very center, there's a small black dot. And the teacher holds it up for the class and says, "What do you see?" And one student quickly replies, "A black dot." Another student replies, "A spot." One says, "There's a mark in the middle." And so on it went, and each student focusing on the small dark circle. And after a few moments, the teacher gently says, "Yes, there is a dot, but not one of you mentioned the rest of the paper. the wide open space of white that surrounds it, the things that are behind the paper, in front of the paper, to the sides of the paper. You all focused on the flaw, the imperfection, the interruption. But what about everything else? In Jewish tradition, every person is born with two inner drives: the Yetzer HaTov, which is our good inclination, and the Yetzer Hara, the selfish or base inclination. And these are not good and evil in the simplistic sense, but rather two essential parts of human nature. The Yetzer Hara drives ambition, desire, and self-preservation. It can lead to harm, but it can also fuel creativity and progress when it's guided wisely. The Yetzer HaTov is our moral compass, the inclination to act with compassion, justice, and responsibility. And Jewish ethics teaches that our task is not to destroy the Yetzer Hara, but to channel both inclinations toward good, bringing wholeness to ourselves and to the world. The Israelites had every right to be frustrated and scared by their journey through the wilderness. It was long, hard, and uncertain. They were scared and continued to experience external threats, too. So the Yetzer Hara got the better of them. They were tasked with developing a relationship with God, who chose to free them from bondage. That relationship was based on having enough faith to make the journey. God is not a magician, and life is not a magic show. It is sacred, complex, and invites us to create meaning and purpose, especially through the difficult parts of the journey. There are no quick fixes. There never are. They had to experience the wilderness for 40 years. No shortcut. Behaalotcha, our Torah portion for this week, is so relevant to our lives today, maybe now even more so when it was back then. We are still like the Israelites, in that we often focus on the things we cannot control instead of the things we can control. We spend hours stewing over a colleague's tone in an email or a decision that's made by upper management. We can't change others' actions, but we can choose how to respond with professionalism, boundary setting, or compassion. We scroll through social media feeling anxious or jealous of others' curated lives. We can't control what others post, but we can choose to log off, to cultivate gratitude for many wonderful things we do have, and focus on the richness of our own life. And as of late, the opposite is also true. We scroll on social media and we see the doom and gloom of the world, but in reality, there is so much for us to celebrate and be overjoyed about in our own lives, in our community. Sitting in traffic, we can spiral with frustration about being late. We can't move the cars, but we can listen to music that calms us, or our favorite podcast, or call a loved one, hands-free, of course. Or just breathe and accept what is. An adult child doesn't follow a parent's desired path, career, religion, relationships. We can't control our children's decisions, but we can choose to love unconditionally, remain curious, and model values with integrity. We despair over political decisions, policies, or social injustice. We cannot single-handedly change systems overnight, but we can vote, show up, volunteer, speak out, educate ourselves and others. And what a blessing it is that we all live in a first world democracy. What a blessing to live in a first world democracy. Tonight, I could speak about Iran's threat to Israel's existence, but I intentionally didn't. We will talk about Iran at another time, but Shabbat is our time. It's our day of celebration, of reflection, and that is what we are going to do this evening. And I want to be clear, I'm not suggesting we become naive or we pretend that everything's fine when it's not. There are real challenges in the world and in our lives that deserve our attention, our concern, and staying up to date and knowledgeable. Israelis have been in bomb shelters for most of the day, as Iran has already fired over 300 rockets at Israeli civilians. This is real. But what I am suggesting is that we shift our focus. Instead of being consumed by the things we can't change in this moment, we turn our energy towards what we can, our actions, our responses, our choices, even our presence. That's where power lives, not in controlling every outcome, but in deciding how we meet each moment. The blessing is that we always have control of ourselves and our expectations. When we try to transfer that control to other places, we lose touch, not only with our own sense of calm, but with our sense of purpose. We become consumed by what's broken and uncertain, and in so doing, we overlook the power we do hold, how we choose to respond and how we show up, and where we direct all of our energy. We can spend so much time focusing on what we can't control that we forget the agency we have to cultivate moments of strength and resilience and even joy. Uncertainty doesn't have to unravel us. It is precisely the place where our resilience is born. There is a striking midrash that's found in Midrash Tanchuma and in the Zohar, that is later mystical texts, which teaches that the Torah was written in black fire upon white fire before it was ever given on Mount Sinai. The black fire represents the letters, the written words of the Torah, the visible, the revealed. But the white fire is just as important. It is the space between the letters, the silence between the sounds, the mystery and spirit behind the text. The black fire is what we read. The white fire is what we feel and experience. The black fire tells us what happened. The white fire invites us to ask, what does it mean? What does it ask of me? Our tradition teaches that both are divine and inseparable. The Midrash tells us to read Torah and to live life not only for what is obvious, loud, and legible, but for what lives in the quiet spaces. The white fire is the whisper between the words, and we must create space for that quiet, to gather our thoughts, our feelings, so we can redirect. The white fire is where we curate and build our outlook and our future. As Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, famously wrote in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, everything can be taken from a person but one thing, the last of the human freedom, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. Frankl knew better than most that we cannot always control what happens to us, but we can always choose how to respond. His words challenge us to reclaim our inner agency even when the world feels out of our hands. This isn't about denying pain or difficulty. It's about choosing purpose and resilience in the face of it. Like the Israelites in the wilderness, we may not control when the cloud lifts, but we can choose how we carry ourselves while we wait. We cannot stop geopolitical distrust, nor can we forecast escalation, but we can pray for peace. We can gather together. We can support organizations that aid innocent families. We can speak out. We can resist fear and despair by leaning into our values of compassion, care, and community. So let us recommit today to be steady under our own chuppah. Let us commit to responding with integrity, not being overwhelmed by what we cannot fix. In whatever ways we are able, lighting the candles of hope, opening our hearts, showing up in prayer, we keep our white fire alive, nurturing meaning, especially amid uncertainty. May we offer care, may we resist the black dot of despair, and see instead the vast canvas of resilience, joy, and hope. Shabbat Shalom.